All right. So severe weather education. The goals that I have for this class are these four, and they're in order of importance. And before I really get going, I'll just give you a little bit of background. I'm Bryan Voss. I work for the fire department. I've been a paramedic firefighter for 20 years. So I've been doing that for a long time. The reason why I teach this class, and I'll get into that a lot as we go forward, is the biggest reason is I'm a weather enthusiast. I love weather. I just like seeing it. I don't like the destruction that it causes. But, you know, the phenomenon that weather is fascinating, right? Plus, I was terrified as a child of lightning, right? And I was like, it's going to come through the window, it's going to strike me, and I'm going to die. And I was like, that's so silly. Why am I afraid of it? So I started learning about it. And once I learned about it, I was fascinated. I was enthralled with weather. No, because then I learned about it and I knew exactly what was happening, right? And all that stuff. But then I saw the need to educate people because weather does impact our lives, right? And we might not live in the tornado alley, but we still have severe weather. Right, so the goals: recognize possible or probable severe weather events prior to them occurring. That's the number one goal, right? If you know, right, don't be scared, be prepared is the saying. So if you know, then you can not be there, or you can, take the necessary precautions before anything happens. Recognize IDLH, which is a term that we use in the fire service for immediately dangerous to life and health. Right, meaning that if I go into a building that's an IDLH in atmosphere, I could die right then and there, right? So if I'm able to recognize an immediately dangerous situation, I'll give you a handful, and we'll see which ones. No. We'll see if any of those work. So if we can recognize the immediately dangerous stuff, then we can take the necessary precautions also. How to keep safe during these said weather events, and then understanding a little bit of, not necessarily a goal because this was taught for public safety, but I'm just going to show you how to, look at damage and things like that. There's some of the learning objectives. I won't go over all of them, but basic knowledge of storm systems is we're going to do that. We're going to look immediate and long-term forecasting on weather, and then again, knowledge of how to keep safe. Right, those are the big things. In the contents that we're going to do that with, we're going to learn about some definitions. We're going to forecast. We're going to learn how to read the sky, and you'll see what I'm saying when I get to that part. The types of storms. A little bit about radar, right? I'll give you the basic intro class on how to read radar. And then again, a little bit on damage. This number right here, I don't know if it's in the pack. I think it is. Yes, okay, good. This is the National Weather Service White Lake Station. This is their bat phone, emergency hotline. So if you spot any of the things that I talk about today in a severe weather event, call them and say, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm seeing, and they will be able to send out alerts based off of that. So why is this class important? There's a few reasons. Weather is dangerous. It can cause destruction, as you'll find out later. The United States of America is the motherland for severe weather, as it really turns out. We hold all of it as far as that, and we'll get into it. But the reason why this class for me is important is the Plaza Towers Elementary 7. These 7 children lost their lives in a very violent tornado, the last EF5 tornado to strike the continental United States in Moore, Oklahoma in 2013, about 11 years ago. They were doing what most of us probably did in school, which I know I did when the tornado drill was. You got in the hallway, duck and cover, right? They were doing that in the halls, And when this tornado that was 200 plus mile per hour winds impacted this school, the roof lifted off, the walls caved in on top of them, and they had nowhere to go, and they suffocated. They didn't get blown away. They didn't get they crushed, suffocated, or other injuries, right? Which is the number one cause of fatality in tornadic events is traumatic injury to the head or blood loss, which is what I'm going to help teach you with later on.
They were doing the right thing.
They were doing what they were taught. Right, yeah. Yeah, they were doing what they were taught, but they didn't have to be there. And I'll talk about that later. Christopher, he's the one in the top, the red shirt in the top there. When the tornado hit the school, he was down doing his duck and cover, and when the roof started to lift off, he got up from his safe spot and he went to cover the girl next to her. She lived, he died, right? Died a hero. Tragically at the age of like 7 or something like that. They would have all of them would have graduated last year had they ever got to it. Now Danny, that's his mom. I talked to her on the phone. I was actually lucky enough to get her on the phone. I talked to her for about an hour. She Take Shelter Now Oklahoma nonprofit organization because after this tragic event, she wanted to know why did it happen. Not necessarily why was there a tornado that came through, but why did all these kids die, right? Why was there no actual tornado shelter? If you don't know, Oklahoma is the mecca of tornadoes, right? They are the middle of Tornado Alley. They see annually more tornadoes than any other state, right? And so she was like, why did all these kids not have a shelter for the school? And what turned out is that she found out is that the school district didn't want to pay $1 million. They said the upgrade would be anywhere from $750,000 to $1 million. We didn't want to spend the money. That's why your kids. Or a shelter that was designated tornado safe for a certain rating, right? Which inevitably I think would have helped more than what they had. The building itself, and she went on to tell me there's a lot of other things. The building itself, when they built it, was built to code, but they cut a lot of corners, right? So things, and after an event like that, you always find something's wrong, right? So that's what she made this thing, her nonprofit organization for. She's responsible for the city of Moore adopting designated tornado shelters in the schools. So when they rebuilt all the schools that were impacted, they went and spent that money that they should have spent the first time and have tornado shelters just inside the city of Moore. Not Oklahoma statewide, just that city. But the state of Oklahoma did adopt severe weather school absences. So if any part of the state is under any kind of severe weather, you can go get your kid out of school and it doesn't count as an absence, right? So that was two big things that she was able to do with that nonprofit organization. But what I didn't know, because I knew a lot about this tornado, I knew the damage that it caused, I know how many people died, I know where some of them died at and things like that, but there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know and I didn't really think about. Her daughter was also at Plaza Towers Elementary School when the tornado hit. She has had 47 surgeries since that day, right? And when I talked to her, her daughter was still in the hospital recovering from her last and 47th surgery, right? So the lasting events, consequences don't just stop that day. They go on for years, right? Number one lasting injury and deficit is hearing loss, including her daughter, who is now legally deaf because of the overpressure of 200 mile per hour winds right on the eardrums. 19 children in the 11 years since that have committed suicide because of PTSD. Only one, that's Danny and her husband, have survived as far as marriage of the kids that lost. All right, 2 fathers have died, one by suicide, one by broken heart syndrome, which is a real thing caused by stress. And then many homes and businesses still have never been rebuilt since this, and that was 11 years ago, right? So that right there is why I feel that this class is important enough, right? And I know that there's tragic events that happen everywhere, but this one, for whatever reason, struck a chord with me. So I was like, I'm going to put a class together. So let's bring it back home. this video, which I have to close out and show. So this is Gaylord, Michigan. If you remember 2021, I think is when it was, or 22. Yeah. Right there. So it was, I don't know why there's no other audio except for right at the very beginning, but you can see the tornado comes and just like rips that whole part of that roof off. And part of that building is gone as a result of that tornado. So that was 2022, May 21st, 2022. It was on the ground for 16 miles, 150 miles per hour was the estimated wind speed. 2 fatalities, 48 people injured, and that's because it hit a RV park, like camping park, right? That's where the 2 people died, and that's where most of the injuries were. It was rated an EF3. In the month of May, it was the strongest tornado in the United States, right? And if anyone doesn't know, the month of May is like chaser season. That's when all the storm chasers flood to Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas City, and all that stuff, because that's where all the tornadoes start, right? And that's the big month. So for the month of May to have the strongest tornado in Michigan is something, right? You know, and I know Gaylord's way up there, but it's you know, it's there. And then 1953, Flint, Michigan, a F5 tornado, a beach, was it beach? Flint Beecher was the area that it hit. 10th deadliest tornado in the United States history. That was the path right there. You can see it started at 9:30 at night from Lapeer into St. Lake Clair. And then 2021, White Lake. I remember that one. That was, I'm sure you got the alert if you lived in Oakland County, right? I got it on my phone. I was in an ambulance treating a patient, right? And I got the alert on my phone, and the sirens went off, and I was like, all right, we're going to go to the hospital because I don't feel safe in my ambulance. It was only on the ground for less than 2 miles. It was 100 miles per hour. It wasn't a very big tornado, only caused a couple injuries, but it's much closer to home, right? That kind of thing. There's some of the damage that it did. Our CERT team and part of our team, tech team, got deployed out there because their dispatch center, their EMS and fire dispatch center got hit directly, lost power, so we had to supply power for them. Right, but it was a big thing. This was February last year. If you guys remember, there were 2 tornadoes that happened in the month of February. By this time, I think, well, actually it was about a week ahead of time last year. There were 2 tornadoes in the month of February. It's hard to see, but right here is the edge, and then right here is the edge caught on a Ring camera. My buddy sent me that because he lives up that way. It was in Grand Blanc. It was on the ground for just about 6 miles. The total path of wind damage was 450 yards wide. Right, so a football field and a half is how wide this tornado was. Right, so the wind speed's 115, EF2, stronger, but not that bad, but it was still a wide wind field. Right, and more importantly, it was at what time it says? What time was it? 2:23 in the morning is when it happened. It was in the morning.
I was so surprised.
Yeah, or yeah, it was like 1:15 or something. 1:38. There you go.
I was so surprised that,
Yeah, right. It's not very common, right? But there was an abnormal, just like what we're going to have coming in next week, a 40 degree weather, right? There was a warm front that came in, which I'll give you a little bit of information on later about why all this stuff happened, right? There was, yeah. Yeah, up that way. I didn't get it because we're not in Oakland or Genesee County, but they did get it because my daughter was with her dad in Grand Blanc, my stepdaughter. So she was up there, and he woke up to that, and they were in the basement. You know, he was not very far from it. So, all right. So, recap on importance. Right? Are we going to go out and have you ever seen Lord of the Rings? The phrase Gandalf, right? You shall not pass. Are we going to go out and say that? Of course not. It's silly. We're not going to do that. Do we obtain superpowers? No. Are we going to 100% accurately predict weather after learning this information? Of course not. The average leeway warning time is 10 to 15 minutes for a severe weather event, tornado, right? Oakland County has 276 civil warning sirens, the things you hear go off every Saturday, first of the month at about noon, somewhere around there. They're adding more. How many have a basement? You have a basement? You have a basement?
Yes.
Okay, good. Does all your neighbors have basements? You think?
Still the safest place to go in the basement.
Yes. Yes, still the safest place.
I'm telling my daughter, but she doesn't believe me, my 35-year-old daughter.
No, I promise, yeah.
Take the kids.
Hello, wife.
Okay.
How are you?
Great, how are you?
Good.
Sorry I'm late,
Oh, all right. I didn't know she was coming. So good. We all have basements. We have a basement in our neighborhood. The lady across the street has a basement in her house, and I think there might be like a couple others in our neighborhood. We live right ahead of Spencer Park, Spencer Lake right there. There's an underground river that runs through that neighborhood, Avon Manor neighborhood at John R. and Rochester, and when they were building the subdivision, they found out that most places can't have a basement. So I lucked out and was able to get a basement when we bought our house there. But neighbors behind us that we are really good friends with, they don't. Neighbor on either side of us, old lady and an older couple, they don't, right? So I feel personally responsible that if a severe weather event happens, that I'm like, hey, we got to get everybody in the basement, right? That 10 to 15 minutes, that is true, but what if it's in the dead of the night, right? What if it's you're not expecting it, right? You didn't know there was going to be severe weather or something like that, right? So how quickly after getting this warning can you get to that safe space, right? And so what is the real lead time of a tornado? All right, I want you to listen and look at what you see. Listen.
Big cone tornado.
Big cone tornado is what he said in his southern accent. So what did you see? See the silhouette, right? Through the lightning, right? It's a nocturnal tornado is what they say. What did you hear? Yeah, right? Yeah, wind blowing up against the camera on the microphone. What did you not hear? Sirens. I didn't hear any sirens, and I watched that video from front to back. There was not a single siren, right? And that was in Winchester, Indiana. It's a little bit more of a rural area, right? So they might not have the same setup as us here in Oakland County or Wayne County or Genesee County, but still they didn't, whoever was in the path of that was not going to have a warning unless they got an alert on their phone, right? You are not going to hear that. I know, because you sleep through, you're a heavy sleeper, right? And I know that. She could literally sleep through this tornado, right? And that's just how she is. I'm being in 20 years for fire and EMS, I can wake up with a mouse coughing in the bedroom, right? Right, but
Yeah, no.
how much is that?
Hard around me.
Yeah, how much is that 10 to 15 warning going to get you when you don't even know it's coming, right? You're going to get the knock on the door from the tornado. That's going to be your warning, right? As your roof, like it says, blowing apart and all that stuff. And you might say, well, that can't happen because we live in an area where we have 276 warning sirens, right? There's no way that's going to happen. Last year, June 6, 2024, a spin-up tornado is what they call it, touched down, and it's hard to see from a little bit of the readings, the writing's a little bit small, but a deadly tornado struck Livonia, Michigan, killing a 2-year-old, injuring the mother. Why? Because the tornado, they were scanning for severe weather, and that one scan came through, and they said, I don't see a tornado on radar, so we're not going to warn it. After that, It takes a minute or a couple minutes to scan back around. In that time period, just after it had scanned, a tornado spun up. So they didn't know, because they can't continuously monitor radar. It had spun up, touched down, and it knocked a tree over, a big tree. That tree fell onto the roof, went through the roof, and killed the toddler that was sleeping with his mom in the bed. They were taking a mid-afternoon nap, right? And they had no warning, because they didn't know that there was a tornado that had touched down, because it happened in between scans of the radar. I don't know how many warning sirens that Wayne County has, but I know that they have almost as much as we do, right? So it can happen, right? These warning events can happen. Now, where do you turn to in times of severe weather? Where, like, for warning, where do you go to get your information? The where? TV, the news? News, perhaps? All right. Yeah, there's weather apps, right, and things like that. So the video that I'm going to show you is from a news source in Joplin, Missouri. And just listen to what they say.
State region, we're going to want to keep our eye on that rotation there. Cherokee County, it looks like it's slowly moving out, but that tornado warning is still in effect until 6 o'clock for you guys as well.
Yeah, and just because you think that you're in the all clear for this storm doesn't necessarily mean that you are. We are continuing to update the situation just as rapidly as we can. As soon as the National Weather Service cancels a tornado warning, we will pass that along. But just because you don't see anything outside doesn't mean that it's not there. So please continue to take shelter. If you're in Cherokee County, if you're in Jasper County, if you're in Newton County, those are your best bets at this point in time. Again, western Joplin, portions of southwest Missouri that are right along the Newton-Jasper County border. These are the areas that we're keeping our eye on at this point in time.
Stay tuned. We'll have another update in just a few more minutes.
Radar. Galena is reporting, trained weather spotters in Galena are reporting now sightings of funnel clouds. Caitlin, you were telling me about that just a moment ago.
Yeah, actually, it looks like for right now that rotation is still between the Joplin-Galena area. That's where kind of that inflow is. In fact, right outside of the KSN studio here in western Joplin, we can kind of see those clouds rotating. And it looks like between Joplin, Iron Gates is going to see that rotation as well. Right now, we don't have reports of a confirmed tornado on the ground, but we do have National Weather Service personnel stating that Galena has a public report of a funnel cloud. Public report meaning that one of their train spotters hasn't seen it, but there's our tower cam.
And that would appear to be a power flash. That could be from a lightning strike, but that is the portion of the storm that we have been concerned with.
Tornado sirens once again.
Tornado sirens once again going off in Joplin. Those are definitely power flashes that we are seeing on the ground.
Live in southern Jasper, northern Newton. Take cover.
Yes, please.
Right now.
Please
I am telling you to take cover.
Take cover right now.
We do have a tornado on the ground.
This is a tornado. Yeah, this is a very dangerous.
So that video gives me chills. And I'm going to tell you why. You tune in to your local, Fox 2, Channel 4, whatever, to try and get weather updates and stuff like that. And what did you hear? They said, well, we have reports of a funnel cloud, but no confirmed tornado, right? Take shelter, right? Make sure that you're in your safe spot, but we don't have anything indicating a tornado, right? And then they go to their tower cam and they see a mile-wide tornado ripping through the city, right? An EF5, 212-mile-per-hour winds actively destroying that city. And that, when you can hear them, that chill in their voice, take cover now, like that, when it's already too late, right? So I show you all these things because, so that was last year. That was this is all the different tornadoes that happened throughout the United States. 1,910 reported tornadoes are confirmed. 82 of those being EF2 or higher. So that is like 120 miles per hour or higher. In our state, last year we had 15, with that one in Kalamazoo Battle Creek area being the strongest. Things like that.
Can we go back to that one?
Which one?
The whole country.
Yeah.
So where is actually Tornado Alley? Where does
So-
it start and where does it end?
Tornado Alley is like Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Colorado into Nebraska and Iowa and things like that. So like this big swath of land is Tornado Alley. Dixie Alley, which is now like the winter version of Tornado Alley, is like the southern states, right? So we have a little bit, this like little hot pocket in Michigan right over here, that's the last part of Tornado Alley official, right? But as we're seeing throughout the years, that things are changing. Right? That was the year before, that was 2023 where we had 1,400. We went up almost 400 tornadoes the year before. Put that green spike right here, see how the right there in May 31st, April 1st, spikes up off past the graph here. Keep that in your head. I want you to remember that because we'll talk about that later. And this is from 1950 up to 2004. You can see that there's an up and down, but as we go along, the average amount of tornadoes increases year by year. Right? So weather spotters, right? We are weather spotters. At the end of this, you're going to be able to recognize certain things, right? You're going to be weather warned, things like that. The United States, like I talked about, is the most severe weather prone country in the world, having 10,000 thunderstorms a year, 5,000 floods, 1,200 annually tornadoes, and about 2 landfalling hurricanes, right? Most of the presidential declared disasters are weather related, causing, 500 deaths every year annually and about $14 billion in damage, right? So like weather is here, it's here in this country. We own it, and we need to know how to anticipate it, how to protect against it. Right here, this is right from weather.gov/spotter guide. Spotter reports provide vital truth to the National Weather Service. They have tons of different, all the different fancy technologies and things like that as far as radar and all that stuff, but they don't see every moment, right? That kind of stuff. You work as a nurse in the thing, you have, if your patient's on a cardiac monitor, do you get alerted when they have a bad thing happen?
Yes.
Right. So that's her alert thing that she gets in the hospital is like us calling saying, hey, look, this hotline, the bat phone, hey, I've got this in the sky right now. I'm at Rochester and Avon. I'm seeing it right here in the southwest corner, right? So let's go over some definitions. Severe weather statements, right? So there's a watch, a warning, a PDS, and an emergency. And I'm going to explain to you what a watch is, right? So a watch, the official definition is conditions are favorable for a predicted event. Right now, do you have ingredients in your pantry to make a cake?
Yes.
Right. That's a watch, right? You have all of the ingredients necessary to bake a cake. You have an oven, you've got the mix, you've got the frosting, you've got the eggs, the milk, whatever it is that goes into a cake, right? So that's what it is. When they say that you're under a watch of whatever kind, flood watch, tornado watch, severe thunderstorm watch, the conditions are right for it to happen. It doesn't mean that it's going to, it just means the conditions are there, right? You have all the ingredients for a cake. A warning means that now that I'm talking about cake, when you come home and you start making cake, you've actively taken all of those ingredients and you're now in the process of making cake, right? That's a warning. So when they say a severe thunderstorm warning, it means that all those conditions that were right for that thunderstorm are now starting to come together, right? And now you're now under a warning. A PDS, particularly dangerous situation. The very first PDS that was ever issued was in 1999, May 3rd, May 1999. The Bridge Creek Moore tornado. It was an F5. It was massive. It has the strongest wind speeds that we've ever recorded on a tornado, 320 miles per hour. It was ridiculous. So they issued a PDS warning to everybody that was in the area. Basically means that there is a tornado on the ground, has been spotted, or a significant tornado is expected based on radar signatures. And then the last and final and the most rare that will ever come out is a tornado emergency. It's the highest level. It's like DEFCON 1 when we talk about severe weather alerts and things like that. Basically is when a violent tornado has touched down and there is severe threat to human life, property, with catastrophic damage confirmed. Right? So they've issued it a few times. I've watched these weather events happen live, and they have issued a there was a tornado that was on the ground doing catastrophic damage. They want people to take this one seriously. When they issue tornado warnings in the tornado alley, like in the Midwest area, the standard response for when the alarms go off and all that stuff is they open their front door and they're, where? I don't see it. Right, that's what they do in the Midwest, right? In Oklahoma, Arkansas, they love to do that, right? The Midwest dads go out and on the front porch and they're just like looking around, right? There's no tornado. They do this all the time. When it becomes serious for them is when they start issuing PDSs and tornado emergency alerts, right? That's when the Midwest guys and the dads say, all right, enough time, let's go hunker down in the bathroom or the basement. Did you guys have all the, did you copy it down? You good? Okay. Types of events. So, severe thunderstorm. Any three of these, any one of those makes a thunderstorm severe. It doesn't have to have all three. So it's a thunderstorm that produces a tornado is a severe thunderstorm. Winds of at least 58 miles per hour, sustained winds of at least 58 miles per hour, or hail in 1 inch diameter. It's pretty big hail. Makes it a severe thunderstorm. A flash flood is basically an excessive amount of rainfall in a short period of time, usually in about a 6-hour period. All right, if you get an excessive amount of rainfall, it happens every year here in Rochester. I don't know how many times I've stood out in the soaking rain, just drenched head to toe in my uniform, telling traffic not to drive through the 4-foot-high puddle that's out in front of the fire department. And like they do it anyway, and then they get stalled out, and then I'm like, well, buyers, let's get buyers over here because they're now stuck in there. A tornado is a violently rotating column of air. Notice it says rotating column of air, not cloud, right? Cloud does not have to go from the cloud to the ground to be a tornado. It just has to start making dust or debris swirl on the ground, right? Because it doesn't always condensate.
What was that big word at the bottom?
What? Cumulonimbus?
Pegged it to
Cumulonimbus is a thunderhead, thundercloud.
oh,
It's a cloud that is a thunderstorm. Cumulonimbus.
oh, okay. It's a pretty big word for thunderstorm.
Yeah, big fancy word.
Big fancy word.
Yeah, you can just say thunderstorm. It's no big deal. Yeah. Hail forms from the thunderstorms, right, can cause high damage. Talk to anybody in Colorado and they'll tell you all about hail, right? They're the hail capital of the world, right? Damaging winds, straight line winds that exceed anything from 50 to 60 mile per hour. Most common type of damage from thunderstorms, right? We've had these, we'll have these events that'll come through Michigan, usually from the west to east. Those straight line windstorms will come through and wreak havoc, and I'm up all night chasing down power lines and all that stuff. And then winter weather, so about death or injuries, about 70% occur in automobiles, 25% are caught out in the storm, and majority are males over the age of 40. So I'm dead in the winter weather because we think that we can brave it, apparently, I guess is what the data is saying. All right, but 70% of people do get caught out in the automobiles and things like that, which I didn't think it was that high.
What if that's due to summer
I don't think so. No, we're not stubborn. You're crazy. Weather fronts. Warm front and a cold front. That's all you really need to know as far as when it comes to weather fronts. Anytime that a weather front is coming in, whether it be warm or cold, there's going to be inclemental weather, right? Usually the cold front is the one that does most of the damage when we talk about severe weather, but never trust a warm front either, right? Because that's what happened last February when the 2 tornadoes happened up in Grand Blanc, right? It was really cold, a warm front came in, just pushed it up and stirred all the stuff in the atmosphere, and it caused 2 tornadoes. So here's a warm front. Usually it's a slower moving system. It doesn't stir up as much, right? It's going to cause some moderate precipitation, you know, some thunder here and there. Usually not that big a deal, but it can. And then cold front, that's the one that usually is the more devastating one. And the reason why, and I'll talk about it more when we get into hail and stuff like that, but this big bowing front, it's coming in really fast and it's pushing things up, right? And anytime we have lift, we talk about tornadic possibility anytime we have lift, right? So if it's coming in like a wedge and it's pushing things up, right, it's causing lift. We'll get into that later. So hail. What is hail? Anyone? Ice, right? We can get with ice, right? Anyone ever have a jawbreaker, right? The candy. It's essentially what a hailstone looks like if you were to break it open, right? You would see multiple layers of ice and things like that. How is it formed? Did anyone know? It's okay if you don't. So water gets pushed up high into these clouds, right, because of lift. It freezes. It comes back down because it's become heavy, right? And it gets sent back up again. Collects more moisture, freezes again, falls up and down until it's too heavy for that to keep getting lofted into the atmosphere, right? So why is it significant? Well, I just said the word, lift. Anytime that we have hail present in a storm means that there's an updraft in a storm, right? And anytime there's an updraft, there's a possibility for a tornado, which when we get into the ingredients for a tornado, you'll understand. But hail is significant because it indicates the presence of lift or updraft in a storm. And you can kind of see a little bit here in this diagram, right? The water comes in, it's getting circulated, froze, drop, until it finally falls as small or large hail. And there's kind of like the cross section that I was talking about, right? It's like a jawbreaker. So, which of these pictures do you think is considered a significant hailstone? Like size. If it was falling from the sky and we're using penny or dime or quarter, which one do you think is a significant? It's going to be a quarter. That's 1 inch in diameter, right? So that right there, like if you have a quarter, even if you have a quarter on you right now, it's about that big, right? It doesn't seem that big, but it's heavy, right? Which means that there's enough updraft in that storm to keep that hailstone up there for that long before it finally falls down to the earth, right? A 1 inch hailstone. So if you're if you're looking outside and it's hailing and you're seeing a bunch of quarters laying out there, that hotline I talked about, call them. Say, hey, I got 1 inch hailstones at this address. And again, anything above that, right? So, how to forecast? Talking about extended forecast. This is the most important one, right? Because if you know, don't be scared, be prepared, right? If you know how to do it, right? Talk about through the week, utilizing readily available methods, right? I'm not going to do anything overly complicated here. So weather apps, they're invaluable, right? People didn't have this stuff 40, 50 years ago, right? They didn't even have it 30 years ago, right? Not until really everybody got smartphones, or at least above average intelligence phones, that we had access to weather apps where they started putting out forecasts. Hey, on Saturday, 5 days from now, I've got a possibility of severe thunderstorms in my area. Maybe I want to be looking ahead and seeing what I can do, right? So those are the common ones that are going to be on everybody's phone and things like that. spc.noaa.gov, spc.noaa.gov. I don't, one of them might be on there. I don't know. I don't know if it actually got printed off, because I know she said she was having some difficulties. But if you want to write that website down, make sure you write that website down, because this is a big one. This is really important. spc.noaa.gov. It's the Storm Prediction Center from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. What you're going to see on there is you're going to see a big thing of the country, and then they're going to show you what they think, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, what the possibility for severe weather in these selected highlighted areas, if there is any, right? So if you go to that website, there's going to be a whole thing on tornado safety right there. This is all I got all the information where the graphs that showed all the different tornadoes, right? It was all from this website also. But if you click on that right there in the center, what you're going to have is this. You're going to have your convective outlook, right? And it's going to have, this one has a slight, just general thunderstorm in this area, marginal risk for severe weather in that selected area, right? And then they'll have a big blurb about what they think could happen and all that stuff if you really want to read into it that much, right? What I want to point out is this. When you click on it, this is what you're going to get. Day 1 convective outlook. Now this was February 27th, 2024, that's last year, when we had 2 tornadoes in our state in the month of February. As you can see, we are in the slight risk, right? So a scale of 1 to 5, we were in number 2 right here for general severe weather. There's 4 different categories up there though. So there's categorical, which is everything all together. Then we moved to the tornado. We were only under a 2 to 4% chance of having a tornado that day. Only 2 to 4. No big deal, right? It's not big at all. The biggest threat would have been wind and hail. That was the biggest threats for severe weather that day. What we ended up having were 2 tornadoes that night, right? So this kind of stuff, if you look at it, if you go there and you say, all right, well, we're under a 5% chance of having a tornado that night. 95%, you're not going to. But there's still 5% chance there could be a tornado. But it's always going to be definite wind and more than likely a hail risk, right? So it gives you a lot of information, and it tells you in that little blurb when they expect it to happen too. So it's a good website to use. Hopefully this sheet got printed off. If not, then yeah. This one it's on the website if you don't have it printed off here, and she'll get it to you eventually. But if it's not, then this is the one that has all the different colors, right? And I'm not going to stay on here that long because there's a lot of information on here. But slight. So we were under a slight that day. So increased confidence that some storms will contain damaging winds, severe hail, and or tornado potential. Right, a few severe storms could be significant. How bad could these storms be? Right, similar to storms your area may experience a few times a year. Right, so they break it down pretty specific to what that slight means. You remember that day that I told you that spike that May 31st, April 1st, where that spike was way off the chart? That was what that day looked like on the convective outlook. And you can see there's 2 areas that said high, right? If you go back to high confidence that an outbreak of storms will contain tornadoes. That's the very first thing that it says, right? It doesn't talk about like, severe storms in your area. It's talking about there's a high confidence that an outbreak of storms will contain tornadoes, damaging winds, and or severe hail, right? How bad could these worst storms be? Very intense storms that your area may only experience once or twice in a lifetime, right? So when they come out with these higher level warnings, take them seriously, right? So that was what it looked like. That was the tornado outlook. You were at 30% hatched risk of severe tornadoes in this area, and that's the areas that got them. YouTube, I go to this guy's webpage all the time on YouTube. Ryan Hall Y'all is his handle on YouTube, but he puts out weather videos using the data that I just gave you, right? And he's collected them all, and he's been studying weather for longer than I have, I think, and he's as enthusiastic, if not more, than I am about it. And he puts out weekly videos, he puts out monthly videos on, like this one, he'll put out weekly videos, if not daily, if the weather's severe enough. And when there's a 10% chance of severe tornadoes, he goes live. And he has, he looks at the radar and all that stuff, and he's always constantly trying to get people aware or alert, right? Because he doesn't want people in danger. Weather radar apps, if you ever wanted to use them, Radar Omega, Storm Shield, Radar Scope, you all have to pay for those, all right? But if you wanted to, you don't have to. This right here, I want to get one of these for the house. This actually will wake her up because these things are really loud. These are Midland Weather Alert Stations. They get all the alerts from the National Weather Service. So if they put out a severe thunderstorm warning, it's going to alert off in your home just like a smoke detector. And it's going to beep, 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 and it'll tell you in a monotone computer voice what they're expecting, right? So if they put out a tornado warning at 12 o'clock midnight, you're going to wake up to it, right? And you're going to have that 10 to 15 minute leeway time, right?
What is the price range?
I think they're like 60, 70 bucks, I want to say. They're under 100, I want to say. There's two different models. One is, the advanced model. One is the cheaper. Both work though. So sky reading. All right. So we went into forecasting. We've said, all right, we know that something's coming potentially in our area in a week or a couple days. Now it's the day of. How do I know when I'm in danger? Right? Will Robinson, danger, danger. Whatever. What are we looking for? We're looking for ominous, dark-colored clouds, towering, odd colors, green, rotation, funnel clouds, wall clouds, and I'll show you examples of all these. So when I say ominous, dark in color, what do you think I mean? So when you look at something, if you ever look at an image and it gives you the chicken skin, goose pimples, right? Or you're like, ooh, man, that I don't want to be anywhere near that, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say ominous. So that, right? Would that give you the heebie-jeebies? You're like, I don't want to be anywhere near that, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say ominous or dark in color. That's ominous. Dark in color. Again, another example of ominous, dark in color. And when I was teaching at a fire station, the fire chief was like, he's like, well, that's great if you're in Nebraska and you can see 20 miles, flat plains. What does that do for us in Michigan? There's tons of trees. And I said, fine. I'll give you towering. So you go out there outside and you're like above the treetops and things like that. You see a big white fluffy cloud, right? It's a cumulus cloud. You're like, oh, that's cool. Like that one looks like, my dog, or that one looks like a building, and things like that, right? And then you go out there maybe an hour later, and that big fluffy white cloud turned into that on the horizon that you can see above the treetops, right? And you're like, oh, that was not that big last time I came out here. And then you go outside and you look at that, right, above, if you're, above the treetops, in the distance, coming towards you, right, or around you, right? You went from this little fluffy white cloud to getting some strength, full-on cumulonimbus, right, or thunderstorm, right? That right there, I guarantee you somewhere down there, there's going to be a lot of hail, right? There's going to be a lot of wind, there's going to be a lot of rain, right? So that's what I mean by towering, right? If you go out there and you see those clouds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right, that's towering. That's yeah, that's going to have some updraft. Right? And you can tell that the tightness of these clouds right here, they're like cauliflower tight. They've got a lot of energy, a lot of potential in there. Right? So that's what towering is. Odd coloring, green. You ever seen green skies? What does it mean? It doesn't mean get home, right? Don't be outside. What green means hail. There's presence of hail in that thunderstorm. It's a refraction of light that's going through those clouds, hitting that solid ice, and just a little bit of bend of light causes it to shift to green, right? And that.
I remember as a kid seeing the sky get all green and we got a turn, and I was probably like 7 years old. But I remember it getting really, really quiet. Is there something?
Oh yeah, they talk about people, the sound that it just gets really quiet because all the birds are, yeah, the birds and the animals know before we do. They know something's up, so they're just like, I ain't flying in this. I'm gonna hunker down. So if you see green, know that there's hail. And why do we worry about hail? Remember why? Lift, updraft, right? Right. So there's some more examples of green, right, underneath this dark, ominous, scary-looking cloud here. Real dark green skies. Right. There's a little bit in there. You can kind of see it up in there. That's a wall cloud, by the way. See that flat right there? That's where if this was a moving picture, this would be rotating. Right. That's where you would see the rotation. Funnel clouds. So it's not in contact with the ground, but it is dangling off of something similar to that. And it is rotating. You can kind of see because it's really smooth in texture, right? Because it's rotating, right? It's got a smooth pattern to the clouds and things like that, but it's not in contact with the ground though. So it's not a tornado yet, but it is a funnel, right? And again, that does not have to touch the ground for it to be a tornado. If below this there's a swirling little thing of dirt and stuff being thrown in the air, it's a tornado, right? You see this kind of stuff, I want you to call that hotline number, right? You see that wall cloud, I want you to call the hotline number. Right? Those are the things I want you to call for. That right there, that's a very pretty little funnel cloud right there. I don't see any debris yet below it, so I think it's just a funnel cloud, but that turned into an EF5. It was Canada's only EF5 tornado they've ever had. All right, so that little guy was a tornado. This right here is a scud cloud. It's not a tornado, not a funnel cloud. It's a scud cloud. We call it an SLC, scary looking cloud, right? We're like, I don't like that. I don't like the way that looks. But you can tell the difference because this is very jagged in appearance, right? It's not smooth. It won't be rotating. It's just dangling there. It kind of looks like a little tornado, but it's not. It's just dangling off the cloud. It's not a tornado. Don't call for that. There's another example of a scary looking cloud right there, SLC. There's a wall cloud that's off to the distance, right? It's going to be hard for us to kind of see that, right, because we don't have this large distance to look at, but basically it's a lowering of that thunderstorm that's hanging really low over the ground, and that's where that tornado is going to come from, usually right about that way. We good on those? You want to see any of those pictures again? Okay, all right. Types of storms. So we have our popcorn thunderstorm, multi-cell thunderstorms, lines of thunderstorm, squall line, and a mesocyclone. Pop up, popcorn. What they are is they're really strong thunderstorms that pop up really quick, dump a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and then they go away. Just like popcorn, right? Pop, 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 and they're done, right? Generally, they usually just cause a lot of rain and a lot of, probably knock a lot of wind, branches down and things like that, but generally aren't very bad, right? They just kind of come out of nowhere and wreak a little havoc and they go away. Little gremlin thunderstorms. Multi-cell thunderstorms, if you're looking at this radar, you're going to have a whole bunch of different thunderstorms in an area, right? They're all either going to converge or they're all going to get bigger, right? There could be a bunch of little popcorn thunderstorms, or they could just be a bunch of different thunderstorms that are going to combine and make one big one. And these line of thunderstorms, these happen a couple of times across the United States, but as you can see on this radar loop, on October 3rd, 2014, it went from middle of Texas all the way up into Michigan, right? Those lines go all over the place, across the entire country. These are the things that cause us the most problems here in our area. Call them squall lines. They are fast-moving, straight line wind thunderstorms. Right? They usually come from the west, heading over east. Right? They go right over us. They're moving about 70, 75 miles per hour right over top of us. They're dumping a lot of heavy wind. Not usually a lot of rain. If it is, it's just a big, quick band of heavy rain, and then it moves on. But it's usually wind, straight line wind. Right? These are the ones that give me trouble every time I'm on shift because I'm up all night long, right, chasing down power lines and stuff like that. If you remember, there's on Main Street down that way, there were, I think they're built now, but there were two like apartment-style condo buildings that were built, right? We had one of these come through here while they were still building it. They had most of it done. It was bricked, right? All the stuff was there except for the interior. Shifted it off its foundation into the other building. They had to tear it all down and build it all back over again because of a storm like this, right? So they're no joke. They do cause a lot of damage. It's just a drone footage of one of these storms approaching. And that's in real time. He didn't speed it up. That's how fast these things are moving, right? And what you're going to do, and I've stood out underneath them as they've rolled over the fire department and stuff like that, or outside. As they're approaching, you will feel the temperature drop, right? It'll plummet, right? It'll go from like 80, 85 muggy to like a very brisk 50 or 60, right? Because it's drawing up all that moisture as it's rolling across. And you'll start, as soon as that leading edge of that storm catches up to you, you'll start feeling that wind hit hard. It's fun to watch, but I know what's coming, so I don't necessarily like them.
So is that a squall line?
Yeah,
One?
yeah,
Like the one that hit on Main Street?
yeah, the exact same one.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily that same storm, but the same type of storm.
So those buildings collapsed because they weren't finished? I mean, the buildings around them were fine.
Yeah, no, I think because they were tall and wide, they caught a lot of wind, like a sail, and they just caught the wrong part of the wind. It just hit hard. They probably got hit with a good 80 mile per hour gust and just. No. Mm-mm. No, they built them to the same code as they would before, as they're expecting to. Mesocyclone. So this is a thunderstorm that has rotation, right? When we talk about thunderstorms that have rotation, that's what we mean is like it's rotating. There's a good possibility there could be a tornado, right? These are the thunderstorms that produce tornadoes, right? These are the tornado thunderstorms. Mesocyclone is what we call them, or a supercell if you don't want to say mesocyclone. Supercell. And we'll get into the structures of that kind of stuff. But when we talk about ingredients for a tornado, there's four main things, and I've talked about one, lift, right? But SLIM is the acronym. Shear, lift, instability, and moisture. And I'm going to go from moisture back, that kind of thing. Let me know if you need to, when you're good to move on, because I know you're writing. Good? Okay. So moisture. Thunderstorms, severe weather, they feed off of moisture. That is what fuels severe weather. The higher the dew point, the closer the clouds are formed to the surface. Basically, dew point is the temperature at which water turns to cloud, right, in the atmosphere. At some point, water is going to turn into a cloud, and that's what a dew point is, right? So the higher the dew point, the lower those clouds are going to be, closer to the surface. Right, and so the closer the clouds are to the surface, the greater the chance for them to build up, right? You ever had those days where you go outside and you're just like, it is really muggy out, and you're like, it's going to storm. It's going to storm later, right? Those are those days you can just kind of tell, right? Those are really high dew point days. A lot of moisture in the air. And then you get lift. Lift can come from a lot of different things. Come in those incoming warm fronts, right, that we talked about. A cold front, like a wedge, just pushes air up, right? A big thing of low pressure can cause that, right? Winds blowing, coming up, pushing up, right? There's a lot of different things. Instability causes lift, and I'll get into what instability is, but lift is when that air is rushing upward, right? Shear is vertical wind or horizontal wind up through the atmosphere, right? So wind changes direction with speed and height, right? So if you have lift, right, that's feeding this moisture, this thunderstorm is feeding off a lot of moisture, right? It's building up. It's causing a lot of lift. There's hail, right? It's got a lot of lift, and we introduce shear into it, which is horizontal, right? Wind. You have lift, shear, lift, shear. You see what's happening there? It's rotating, right? So whenever we talk about hail and the significance of hail, when we have heavy hail, if there's a lot of updraft and that storm catches some shear, it catches horizontal wind, it's going to start rotating that updraft, right? Which then we start talking about that storm has rotation, and anytime there's rotation in the storm, we start talking about tornadoes, right? Supercell. So this is what a mesocyclone is, or a supercell, right? It's a big giant thunderstorm that has this big updraft. It's encountered shear, so it's rotating, right? And if that rotation is strong enough, it'll start spinning that wind down to the ground, right? That violently rotating column of air, and then we get a tornado, right? So that's why when we talk about hail being significant, that's what we worry about. Does that make sense? You know? Okay. Yeah. It's just a picture of rotation, what it looks like. It's a really long video. It has a lot of stuff in it that you don't need to know about. Radar. Do we know anything about radar? No. Yeah, we use it on the weather, right? It works essentially the same way as radar does for the military or planes, right? It's sending a pulse out and it's hitting something that's a solid object and it's bouncing that signal back, right? They've modified the Doppler weather radar to pick up moisture in the air, right? And things like that, right? So we measure two things with radar. We measure reflectivity and velocity. So density and speed essentially is what we're getting at with radar. So reflectivity does not measure water per se, right? It measures how reflective things are. Water is dense and very reflective, therefore it shows up really well on the weather radar. But large fires and swarms of locusts can trigger a false radar image, right? Because we're still bouncing something off of a dense object, right? So it happens in the Midwest Plain States, Oklahoma, where the locusts fly over the fields and stuff like that. It'll bounce back, create a false image, right? Large house fires, the smoke's really dense, creates a radar image, right? And velocity is wind speed relative to the radar source at cloud height. It's just measuring speed. I promise it'll become clear. I'm going to explain it to you. So that's what weather Doppler is going to look like. It's a big round ball, about 100 or so feet up off the ground, right? And that's kind of how it works. It's going to send out a pulse, right? and it's going to bring it back. And the faster it comes back means it's, the higher frequency it's moving towards you. If it's coming back slower, then it's moving away from you, right? Doppler effect, right? It's the same thing if you stand outside and there's a siren that's coming towards you, it's going to sound higher, as opposed to if it's out past you, it's going to sound longer, right? That's the Doppler effect. All right. And, curvature of the earth and stuff like that, the Doppler sends out a straight beam, so it's going to see storms at different height angles, right? Because it doesn't follow the curvature of the earth, it just goes out straight. So, that's reflectivity, right? The stuff in the warmer colors, as we call it, like the purples, the reds, the yellows, there's higher reflectivity. So there's a lot of moisture in this particular area as opposed to on the outer fringes, right? So like this purple, that probably is a little bit of hail, I would guess. Over here is a little bit of hail too. Generally hail shows up as either like purple or black on radar because it's so dense. But there you go, there's a swarm of insects and there's a large house fire, right? Both showing a radar signature. Velocity. Let me take a drink of water. Getting a little dry. All right. It might sound confusing, I promise it's going to become clear. Lake Charles is the radar site. Okay? There's going to be primarily two different colors, the purple, ignore the purple, on velocity when we're looking at radar. Green and red, or cool and warm, right? Red is wind moving away from the radar site. Green, towards the radar site. So looking at this image, we can assume that the wind is going east to west. Fairly significant because it's a big bright image, right? So I think this is an image of a hurricane over that area, right? So the winds are whipping that way. But you can kind of see that, right? Green is towards the radar site, red is away. All right, so how do we find rotation? Well, let's get into some radar signatures. A bow echo, a hook echo, hail spike, and rotation. These are the four big signatures on radar that we want to look for if we're looking for immediate danger. Remember that squall line that I talked about? See how it has a bow, right? Like a bow and arrow, right? It has a bow echo, right? It has a very signature look on radar. It always does, always will, because it's being pushed by a cold front, a gust front, right? And it's pushing it out. Okay? And you're going to see that bow echo on the radar. Hook echo. Do you see a hook? Right in this little area, right there, right? So it's going to have what they call a flying eagle appearance. If you think of an eagle kind of like flying over the surface of the water with its wings kind of tucked, but just like really going, it's got that flying eagle look. If you can kind of see it a little bit. But there is the hook, right here. That is indicative of a tornado, right? So this is the big leading edge of the storm. It's moving this way, right? And this is the area of rotation, right? It's inflow, right? So it's going to be feeding off, the tornado feeds off of moisture and clean, good air, right? So this is the inflow notch, right? That's feeding this tornado, and that is the tornado. Or this area is the heavy area of rotation that they talk about. So if you look on your radar and you see like that, it's like a hook to me. It's a big thing of rotation, right? And I'll show you exactly a real time. This is from my phone. I was on a cruise when I was talking. I was telling you? No, I was telling you back there. That remember I was on a cruise and they said you need to come in because we're sending people to Gaylord because of that tornado because there's 2 people missing. I said I would love to, but I'm on a cruise ship in the Gulf and I can't. So I went on my phone and I scaled back a couple of frames on the radar and I took a screenshot, and that's from my phone. Do you see the hook? Yeah, right, here's the big leading edge of this storm, right, this flying eagle appearance, as they say, the inflow, the hook right here. There was the tornado heading right in toward Gaylord, right? So that's using radar. You can just spot it. A hail spike is just like this weird like little spike that comes off of a big, notice how dark in color that is right there, really reflective. Right behind that is this like little spike. It's indicative of really, really strong, heavy hail, right? It's a glitch that the radar is like, I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to put something out there, right? So if we see that spike there, we can kind of take that seriously, that there's some heavy hail, right? You don't want to be caught outside in that. Now rotation, using the velocity, right? We have reflectivity that we measure with, but we can't confirm it until we see it with velocity. So again, in our image before, you have the radar site right there in the middle. The wind's going from, the red is going away from the radar site, green is going towards the radar site. Straight line winds there. Is there anything different in this picture? So here's the radar site, Dodge City. Right, red right behind it. I wish this was extended a little bit out there, but we can see red is what? Going away, right? Green going towards, right? What's happening down here though? We have red, which would mean what? Going away, and the radar site's here, right? So this wind is going this direction, and you've got green right here, really brighter color, going that direction. You see how that has like a little couplet right there? You have red going this way, green going this way. So you can imagine what's happening right there. It's rotation, right? There, if you were to overlay this with a reflective image, you would see a hook right here because the area of rotation is right here. And we can see that using velocity on the radar. Does it make it a little bit more clear, right? Always know that red is going away and green is going towards the radar site, right? So if you have red in an area that it's not supposed to be in, there's some kind of turbulence, right? Rotation. So there's, again, a screenshot from my phone there, dime box. I don't know exactly where it is, but ignore the tornado little icon there. But do you see a familiar signature here on the radar there? Kind of like a little hook right there. Inflow notch, right? Flying eagle, little inflow notch. Underlaid with velocity right on top of it. You notice that the red is in an area that's not supposed to be, right? Showing indications of rotation, right? So that's how we confirm a tornado using radar, right? Again, little circular thing with an inflow notch, a little hook there, right? Underlaid with velocity. It's green this time, so it's it's a different thing, but there's still some areas of rotation there because we have green and red where it's not supposed to be. All right, you want a little practice at it? It's not that hard, I promise. All right, so we have a reflective image here, right? We can see there's some a lot of hail probably in this area because it's black and white, pink, right? Really heavy. Do you see anything in this image? Just looking at it. About this big area right here, and there's a little hook, right? Right? There's a little inflow notch right here around the Galena area. All right, let's time stamp it ahead of time. Does it get a little bit more clear? Yeah? Right? It's a more pronounced hook, right? That storm cell that was over Loma Linda is now kind of coming up and joining into it, but you have this big clear slot of inflow with a hook, right? Let's put some velocity over top of where the previous image was, right? This little couplet here, right, indicating some pretty strong rotation right there, right? If we put them side by side, right, 5:34 p.m. right here, and then as that advances forward, you have that even stronger rotation, right? So that was that Joplin tornado that I talked about, where they did the tower cam and stuff like that, where they didn't know that it was there until they saw it. That was this tornado. And then these line of cells, I won't touch on this a whole lot, but these line of cells, these storms that stretch from, states wide, right? They can have what they call embedded supercells. So like it would be really hard to kind of see individual supercells, but once you learn the pattern, like I can see one there, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here, one here, one here, all over the place. This was April 25th through the 28th in 2011. It's a super outbreak. They happen about every 40 years or so. This one resulted in a total of 360 tornadoes over those days, right? With April 20th, 27th saw the record of 216 of them. 4 EF5 tornadoes in a single day. It was a massive outbreak of weather. It was crazy. That's a super outbreak. We do have outbreaks like the one that you saw, the May 31st, April 1st, that graph where the happened 2 years ago, right? Those happen every other couple of years, especially now that the weather is really starting to get wonky, right? We're starting to see that these things are happening more often. So I just want to bring that up. So utilize sky reason and forecast, right? Talk about cloud formations, the color. We talked about rapid temperature changes. Again, if you start noticing that the outside ambient temperature goes from really warm and hot and muggy to cold, right? Know that there's something coming in. If you get an uneasy feeling, right? They've talked about this, and the National Weather Service does say if you don't feel safe, take shelter, right? That kind of thing. Not so much assessing damage in you guys, but I'm just going to show you some of the damage that can be that's possible. Tornadoes used to be based off of wind speed. Now they're based off of the damage that they caused, right? They used to be the Fujita scale, F. Now it's EF, enhanced Fujita. So it's based off the amount of damage that they cause is how we rate tornadoes. So there's a scale, just a little quick one, EF0, 65 to 85, all the way up to EF5, which is 200 mile per hour plus, right? We don't even get into, 300. It's just if it's above 200, it's an EF5. I'm not going to bother with that video. Save some time. Well, this is some of the damage you can get from EF0, right? Just some shingles off your roof and things like that. Nothing major. EF1, start to tear away part of your roof if it catches the house directly and stuff like that. I think that was insulation. I don't think that's a bunch of chickens. I hope not. But EF, really going to start seeing some actual damage to structures at EF2 or higher. And again, if we go back and look at the graph as far as wind speed, there you go. EF2, we're starting to get into the ranges of 110 to 135. So we're starting to really kind of pick up on wind speeds. EF3, that's going to move your car, right? Your car is not going to be where it was when you last saw it. I really hope nobody was in there in the bathroom at the time that this happened, because they're not going to be there at that point, right? EF4, you no longer have a house. I don't care what it's made from. You huff and puff and blow, and I'm going to take your house down, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's straw. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's their car, though. That could be the neighbor's car. Yeah. See, like, I don't think this house had a basement. This looks like it was built over a crawl space, right? So I really hope they weren't there when that happened, because they're probably not going to be there. The difference between an EF4 and an EF5, your house is gone no matter what. EF5 cleans up after itself. It doesn't leave you anything, right? We talk about completely slabbed, right, down to the bare bones. The anchors for these, the boards that anchor the house to the cement are bent because it took it, right? It takes things. That right here is road. This used to be road. It took the road with it, right? That's how strong these violent tornadoes can be, right? And it completely just leaves toothpicks of trees, right? So talking about the city of Moore, right? As I started off this PowerPoint, we're talking about those kids that died in Moore. If you ever want to see a tornado, go to the city of Moore because you'll probably find one day. This was that May 3rd, 1999 tornado that tracked all the way up here into the parts of Oklahoma City. That was that one where they first issued the PDS. And then May 8th, there was an EF4 tornado that came down here. And then May 20th, 2013, almost crossing paths, right, was that last one that killed those kids at the school. All right, and speaking of the city of Moore, on Google Maps, you can go back in time, right? They have timestamps of like when they've taken pictures. So usually after a big natural disaster, they send the satellite overhead and scope out, right? So if you look underneath here, this is before the tornado, but underneath in this like little field area, kind of going up around here, you're going to see a little bit of a difference. You kind of see it? Where there, it's a little hard to see because it's a little bit dull, but there's a scar in the earth, right? That's from that tornado. That's the Westmore subdivision, or what was left of it after this tornado came through. That's Plaza Towers Elementary School where those 7 kids died. That's where they estimated the tornado to be at peak intensity, is when it struck that school. So over 200 miles per hour. Yeah, you know what? I'll show this video. This was just moments after the tornado passed through.
Oh, 14th. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh.
Completely leveled. It was very destructive. This is the radar loop of it. So you can kind of see in the reflectivity that giant hook, right? And it starts to get really white in the center. That's what we call a debris ball. There's so much debris that this tornado has that the radar is picking up the debris, right? It's not the cloud itself that it's registering, right? It's wrecking that much havoc. So that was May 20th, 2013. It was on the ground for about 40 minutes, 210 miles per hour was the wind speeds, 24 fatalities, 212 injuries, $2 billion in damage. This was Joplin. This one's a little bit more pronounced. Actually, it's a lot more pronounced. You can see down here, south of the Iron Gates, right? Destroyed that town, right? This was the costliest tornado in United States history, right? Absolutely just devastated. And they weren't even supposed to have tornadoes that day. They were under a 5% chance of having tornadoes. The outlook that day was 5% chance, and then they reissued another one, I think a couple of hours before the tornado happened, that said they had a 10% chance, right? So most of the tornado threat was supposed to be in like Illinois, northern Illinois and stuff like that, but it happened here. They weren't expecting it. Luckily, it was on a Sunday, and they were doing graduation commencements north of the city, so they weren't there, right? A lot of people weren't, right? But if it was during a school, it would have been absolutely devastating because every school in the city took a direct hit from this thing. Yeah. 158 fatalities. 7th deadliest in United States history, $2.8 billion, right? So about $3.2 billion now with inflation in damage. Some of these ones can go for miles on end. You can kind of see the scar going from Tuscaloosa all the way up past Birmingham. This was part of that 2011 super outbreak. There was an apartment complex. It's no longer there. 4 people died there. It was on the ground for an hour and a half. it was a long tornado. 64 fatalities, 80 miles it was on the ground for. Right? And to give you like EF scale, like can be misleading. It's based off of how much damage it happens, right? So if it goes over a cornfield and it doesn't really do any damage except for corn, they don't really rate the tornado high. Doesn't mean that wind speeds weren't crazy, right? This one had 200. This is radar confirmed by 2 independent sources that were there, radar mobile, 296 miles per hour wind, 2.6 miles in diameter. Right, and to give you, and it was only rated in EF3 because the damage it did was on the outskirts of itself, and it hit a building, and it only caused EF3 damage, right? But it was over almost 300 miles per hour, right? And if you want to see what 2.6 miles look like, this is Maine and University, so we're right about here. Here's the library. I put this tornado in the epicenter of Parkdale and Letica. There you go. That's 2.6 miles, right? That would engulf all of Rochester, right? And if that hit with 300 mile per hour winds, and you can imagine how devastating that would be. And it happened before in Greensburg, Kansas, 1.7 square miles. Population was 1,400 in 2007. After it, you can see the entire tornado wiped out. 95% of that town only has 740 people that live there. Miraculously, I think only 1 or 2 people died. They all had storm shelters that they were able to go into, and they got warning, right? But it was a big tornado. It wiped out all of it. All right, so what do we do in case of severe weather, right? Your safety, your family is first. A tornado, lowest point in your house, right? Basement. Or the most interior part of your house if you don't have a basement, right? Because the thing that kills people the most is blunt force trauma to the head or severe hemorrhaging, right? Blood loss, right? So if you can put as many walls from you, you know, from the outside to the in, then, you know, let's do that. If you're in a mobile home, don't be there.
Is it better to, if you're in the basement, like my daughter, they just had a house built, and there's, under the stairs, there's like an empty space.
Right.
It's kind of blocked off on one. You can go under the stairs, and over here, there's a cement wall.
Yeah.
I mean, is that better to do something like that? Like,
I would, yeah, I mean, because you still, like, if the floor of the roof gets, or floor of the house gets ripped away, you're going to have stuff coming down. So I'd want to have as much protection above my head as possible, right? Right, but just, you know, if you're in a mobile home, I know it says leave and drive south. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Just don't be there. If there's a possibility of having a tornado in your area, just go to someone else's house, right?
what if you're probably going to say this, but like if you're in your car, you know, I had always heard get out of your car and get in a ditch.
Yeah, lowest point, right? Yeah, because again, it's not necessarily being sucked up by the tornadoes. What kills people is being hit with stuff, right? So if you can be below the level of ground, that kind of thing. Blizzard, right? Stay inside. If you have a power loss, go to the basement, right? Because it's going to be warmer. That kind of thing, right? If you have a generator, place it in a well-ventilated area away from the house, right? I can't tell you how many times a year people die every time there's a power outage because they have a generator, right? Severe thunderstorm, shelter in place, right? Just avoid travel, don't be out in it. What to bring with you? A hard hat if you have one, blankets, closed-toed shoes. This is a hint that I got from Danny, his mom. She said, you know, when that happened, there was a lot of kids that were walking out of that school with flip-flops, right, stepping on shards of metal and glass and all that stuff. So closed-toed shoes if you can have it. Your cell phone, battery-operated rechargeable flashlight, glow sticks, bottled water, right? Have a jump bag, have a go bag ready if you have one. That kind of stuff. These are the things to tune into. If you have radio with you, you'll get your weather updates and things like that from you. So what can't we do We can't prevent severe weather, right? Well, what can we do? We can prepare, right, for the inevitable. And why do we do it? We do it for those who, if they had the opportunity to not be there, they wouldn't be there, right? All right, a little bit of a test. See how much you retained. You can use your notes if you want to. What is a severe thunderstorm? Give me any of the characteristics that make it a severe thunderstorm.
Don't look at me, ask him.
Okay. What about hail?
1 inch in diameter.
1 inch in diameter will make it a severe thunderstorm, right? If it produces a tornado, right, it's a severe thunderstorm. 58 mile per hour sustained winds. What does reflectivity measure in radar? Density, right? And then we talked about which size hail is significant, right? Give me some examples of sky reading. Dark, yep. Ominous, yep. Green, yeah. Good. How is a tornado rated? By damage, right? Yep. Remember what a mesocyclone is? Thunderstorm that's rotating. Okay. Yeah. What's the difference between a watch and a warning?
Conditions are right for a watch, warning.
You're mixing the cake, right? Yeah. All right. Green in the sky. Not good. It means hail, right? What kind of storm system do you think is most likely approaching based off of that? Storm system. A squall? A squall, right? It's got that bow hook, right? There's another example of that. Some damage. What do you see on there? You see a hook on there? Okay, good, good. And then where do you take shelter in a tornado? Yep, right. Blizzard, just stay in place, right? Where do you go for a flood? You get out of there. Don't be there if you can help it. All right, real quick. We're going to do stop the bleed before we're out of time. So, luckily this doesn't take long to learn. The most likely event that's going to happen if a tornado happens is that, and you get damaged and you get hurt. Like I said, the number one killer for people in severe storms are severe blunt force trauma to the head, right, which is why wear a hard hat if we have one, or blood loss, right, with the tourniquet. You know how to put it on? Come here, I'm going to show you. It's easy, all right? So they're going to come in a package, and you're going to unwrap it, and it's going to be very tightly wrapped and stuff like that. So you just unwrap it. Right? It's got a little Velcro. You extend this loop out, right? Go put that on me. I'm bleeding.
Oh, on you?
Yeah.
Okay. So where are you bleeding?
Let's say I'm bleeding right here.
And I got to put it up here, right?
Yep, you got to go above it, right? Cinch that down. There you go.
Velcro, well, be tighter probably. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it just holds it in place. So then we keep this tail out of the way, and then we have this a little strap here, and what you're going to do is just give that a little cranky crank.
Oh, you just turn it?
Yeah, just crank it.
Oh, okay. I was wondering how you could get
Oh.
it tight.
Oh, yeah.
Tight. Okay.
And you go until it stops bleeding,
And
which
then,
is going to hurt. It's going to hurt like crazy. It's already starting to hurt.
And then
you
you
know.
put it in there and
Yep, and then you put it in there,
strap it down.
drop it down, and then it's done. It's that easy. It's not difficult to put on a tourniquet. Yeah, ideally if you have the opportunity to, right?
You don't have one of those handy, so do you just,
What they used to do is you would used to take like cravat or towels, and you'd like take a pen or a pencil and just like twist it, right? But these things are so cheap that you can buy these things for $15-20 on Amazon, and they
Ask us how many we have in our home.
how many we have in our home? 0. I'm the most ill-prepared paramedic in the world. Yeah. Yeah, but you see how immediately that starts getting tight on your arm, right? You go, well, I mean, you can if you want, but like, yeah.
Okay, so you would just do that.
Right, you buy them, they sell them like packs of 3, right? Yeah, and it's really, really easy to do. As you can see, you applied that first time without ever doing it 30 seconds or less, right? Because it doesn't take very long for someone to bleed out if they're bleeding really bad. Yeah. All right, so this right here, this is called wound packing. Let's say you have an injury to the inner groin or upper arm that you can't get to with a tourniquet. What you do is they sell wound pack stuff, but you can just take cling, like any kind of gauze, right? If you don't have that, a towel, a t-shirt, anything that you have, right? And what you right here, and you just start shoving it in there, right? And you're going to fill this. You're going to fill this hole until you can't put any more in there, right? And let's say it was, come up here. Go ahead. I'll show you. Come on. There's no bleeding. You want to come up here? I'm going to give you an example of what to do when you're done. You see how you're just continuously finger over finger packing that in, right? Okay, and you see how notice it gets real tight? Let's say we're at the done point. We can't pack anymore, right? We take what's left or we take something else on top of it and put both hands there. Go ahead. With the palm of your hand. Put as much pressure as you can on there. Okay? You're now married to that. Cannot leave. And the reason why is because all of that stuff is now starting to form a clot, right? So it's tamponading or stopping the bleeding inside. And if you move, you can disturb that, and it can start bleeding all over again.
So how long do you have to?
Until I show up, right? Until somebody that is trained comes by and says, "Oh, got it. I'll take over for you," right? That kind of thing. So if you decide to do this, just know that once you pack it, you're not leaving, right?
But what's the alternative? You have to pack it, right?
Yeah, you have to pack it. They die, or you know what I mean. Like so, these are the two easiest things that you can do. Tourniquet, buy them on Amazon. They're super cheap. Probably going to buy them. CAT. Commercial available tourniquet. Right, and just do it just like I showed you. Right, when you get it, if you're going to go out and buy them, just practice with it so you're familiar with it. Right, and then this again, just start packing a wound as much as you can with what you have, right? Obviously, I have sterile dressing, so that will reduce infection, but if you don't have that at home, a towel, t-shirt, if you have gauze, whatever it is, right? Washcloth. Just know that once you do it, you're married to it. So I would call 911 first, and then pack. So that's what I got. I hope you learned something.